financial problems, elder law, tax problems, business matters, divorce, personal injury, bankruptcy, your life, your reality. Life is complicated. There is the law and there is reality. Welcome to Law and Reality, sponsored by Thav Gross. Now here's your host, Ken Gross.
Welcome to this segment of Law and Reality. Jenny Lingle's with me this morning. Good morning, Jenny.
Good morning, Ken.
Brian Small. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Ken. Pleasure to be here.
The last segment we left off, we were talking about credit card debt, and we were going through Jim's credit card problem. He had $45,000 worth of credit card debt. He was making $125,000 a year, and we analyzed it and said if he can get rid of his credit card debt, he has the potential to take that money that he's been paying to the credit card companies and instead save it tax deferred, $1,500 a month. 20 years would get him to around $888,000. The question that we left off was, how does he get there? Once we've convinced him he has to get rid of the credit card debt, how does he get rid of it? The answer to that question was we use the tools of financial crisis management and we walk through an analysis. Chapter 7, if it will work, will get rid of the debt the fastest and at the least possible cost. If it doesn't work, Chapter 13 is a possible solution, or debt resolution, which is settling the credit card debt outside of bankruptcy, is also a possible solution. Brian, I'm going to turn to you to walk us through that approach. If Chapter 7 is the cheapest, fastest outcome, will Jim qualify? Will he pass what they call the means test, making $125,000 a year?
Let's start off with, there is no magic fairy dust to get rid of debt, just in case anybody out there is thinking that there's some other solution.
Twinkle, twinkle, fairy dust goes.
Okay, so Chapter 7, start off with the definition. Debt elimination bankruptcy. Wipe out your debts, get a fresh start. Eliminate that which you owe. Keep most, if not all, of what you own. In order to
good start.
In order to qualify for Chapter 7, basic parameters are, after you look at all your living expenses, what it costs for your rent, your mortgage, your electric, your gas, your groceries, etc., and you subtract that from your net income, is there anything left over?
All right, well, in Jim's case, if he's paying $1,125 a month in minimum payments and he's paying his taxes, he doesn't have any cash left over because he's in the credit card check. So will that work for him?
No, because Jim has $1,125 left over.
So you don't count that because we're going to get rid of it in the bankruptcy?
That's right. So because we're going to eliminate it, first of all, we look at the budget and we try to determine if there's any holes in Jim's budget, because Jim's been cutting back, eliminating things, falling behind on other things. Maybe he's not paying his electric bill or his gas bill because he's trying to manipulate the system so that he can come up with $1,125 a month or $1,500 a month, whatever it turns out to be. So once we come up with a solid budget, is there anything left over?
So bottom line in this case for Jim, where's he at?
Jim has money left over.
So you can't do a Chapter 7?
He won't qualify for a Chapter 7 unless the majority of his debts are non-consumer debts. So if all of this debt that Jim owed is credit card debt related to running a business that failed,
and he doesn't have a mortgage, let's say,
and he doesn't have significant other debts that exceed it.
All right. In my case, he has a mortgage and it's $45,000 of personal debt. It's entertainment, it's vacations.
Right. So Jim doesn't qualify for a Chapter 7.
What does the $125 disqualify him? That income right
It
off the bat?
also
Or
can
no?
disqualify him because
Let's say he has no kids. He's single.
Single guy making $125,000 a year is not going to pass the means test. We have a series of allowable expenses, and you subtract that from your net income.
Okay,
And
so Jim's not going to make it. But if Jim was only making $60,000 a year or $55,000, then it would be a closer call.
it would be, and we could probably put Jim into a Chapter 7, eliminate the debts, and give him a fresh start.
All right, so if he doesn't do a Chapter 7, that's out. We cross that off the list, not available. Now what's this decision? Chapter 13 versus debt resolution.
Right.
How do you evaluate that?
Well,
Because remember, the goal is get rid of the debt the fastest at the least possible cost.
Okay, so let's start off with the definition of Chapter 13. What is it? It's structured reorganization over time, whereby you repay some or all of your creditors, some or all of the money you owe them, over a period of 3 to 5 years. If you are below the median income, you can be in a 3 to 5 year plan. If you are above the median income, you have to be in a 5-year plan.
All right, so where's Jim?
Jim is above the median income for a household his size.
So he's in a 5-year plan. So if he did a Chapter 13, in general, what would happen?
Well, in this situation, because Jim would have
$1,125
left over, Jim would be capable of repaying all of his creditors
times 60
in full within 60 months.
So if Jim did a Chapter 13, he'd end up paying 100% on the dollar on the credit card debt.
Correct, at no interest.
At no interest. So that would be a benefit.
Huge benefit, because Jim's $45,000 worth of credit card debt is going to cost him an additional $45,000 at least
so
in
at
interest.
least in 5 years, he's then out of debt.
Correct.
Okay. Is there a better option?
In Jim's case, there is a better option, and that
Because
is
5 years, I would rather get out of the debt in 1 week if I could, but if I can get out of the debt in 2 years or less, I'd rather do that than 5 years, right?
And that's the program that we utilize for debt resolution. So now, but let me back up for Chapter 13. If Jim's income was below the median income, let's say he was making $45,000 a year, and instead of being able to afford $1,125, Jim could afford $200.
Then Chapter 13 might be better.
Then Jim would be in a $200 a month plan for 36 months.
For $7,200.
$7,200 against $45,000
That
worth
would
of
be
debt.
a sweet deal.
Huge sweet
So
deal.
sometimes 13 is the answer, sometimes it's not. It depends on how much income you have and whether you're over that, whether you have to go 5 years or 3 years.
But debt resolution is going to be a possible solution for Jim, but I
all right,
know
we're
we're running
coming
out
up
of
to a
time.
break.
We're coming up to that break.
So give me the definition. Debt resolution is settling your credit card debt outside of bankruptcy on a premise of using the money that you were paying them. Rather than paying it to them month to month, we use that money to settle out the debt by settling the cards at a discount.
Pennies on the dollar.
And the question is, how do we accomplish that goal? We're going to come back from the break. We'll explain to you how debt resolution works, and when we're done with that, we're going to talk about foreclosure. We'll be back after the break.
Is the debt piling up? Struggling to get by?
It's all about preserving future income. Bankruptcy is one option. When it's right, it's the least costly, most effective way to save your home, eliminate a second mortgage, and wipe out credit card debt. But you need to address the problem now.
We help people with bankruptcy. Call the experts.
Worth Ave Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP. If you're retired and in a financial crisis, there is a way out.
It pains me when I see a retired couple exhaust their savings by paying credit card bills and for a home hopelessly underwater.
Thav Gross specializes in helping retired people in financial crisis.
You just can't keep paying until you're broke. You need to address the problem now.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
Worth Ave Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
A lifetime of hard work. If you don't have the right plan in place, you can lose your home, your savings, and more. And you didn't come this far to lose everything. Samasco Law wants you to know that laws are changing. Today, the average cost of nursing home care is $85,000 a year. With proper planning, we can help protect your life savings and get you the Medicaid and nursing home benefits you deserve.
How much can you afford to lose? Call Samasco Law today.
Tax problems are major problems. Don't let the IRS levy your wages and seize your assets. There is a solution.
Worth Ave Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
If you're behind on your taxes and owe money to the IRS, call Thav Gross.
We've been solving tax problems for 32 years. We stop wage levies, resolve unfiled returns, and obtain the best possible settlements.
Call Thav Gross today, 888-235-HELP. It's devastating, the effects of debt and foreclosure on you and your family. There is a solution.
Worth Ave Gross. Our firm will solve your problem. Some fear the word bankruptcy, but in reality, it's a strategy to save your home and to eliminate debt. If you're in financial trouble, timing is critical. You need to take action now. We've been saving homes and eliminating debt for over 33 years.
Call Fav Gross 888-235-HELP.
All right, welcome back. All right, so Jim's situation, we figured it out. A 13 is going to be too expensive because he'd have to pay back the full $45,000 worth of credit card debt over the 60-month period. In a debt resolution situation, we normally can settle the credit card debt in the range of 35 to 40% of the total amount of the debt, and that includes the legal fees. The legal fee that we charge is 8.5% of the debt. Now, the question is, how do we know we can settle it at 35-40%? The answer is we look at what credit card companies are owed, and we know the range that we can settle with these companies based upon our experience over the last 7-8 years of dealing with this type of an issue. But here's the magic. Jim's $11.25 a month is going to create the fund that we use to settle the debt. $11.25 times 24 gives us around $30,000 optimal to settle the debt. On $45,000 worth of debt, if we can get that debt settled in the 40% range, we're talking around $18,000 to settle out the entire amount of the debt. That means we can use that $11.25 a month to settle the debt and pay the cost of the attorney fees. Now, how do we do it? Jim stops paying the credit card debt. We then represent Jim. We notify the credit card companies that we're dealing with his financial problems. And when the debts get in the 270-day beyond period, that's when we go in and we aggressively settle them in a range, depending on the credit card company, of as low as 20%, sometimes 60%. But on average, over the course of the program, we get down into that 35-40% cost. The magic is this. At the end of less than 2 years, Jim doesn't change anything. He makes his same amount of payments because he uses that same $11.25 a month, but at the end of the period, he has zero debt. It's a great situation. It's not as good as Chapter 7 because he's still spending $18,000 to get there, whereas a Chapter 7 would have worked for $1,500, but Jim didn't qualify. The important thing is at the end of that 2-year program, Jim goes on and he no longer has any debt. He starts saving that $1,500 a month before tax, and he gets to that $888,000 of savings in 20 years. One thing for Jim to look at is there are tax consequences that we have to analyze in any situation where we're doing debt resolution, because the canceled debt is taxable if it puts you in a solvent situation, and we analyze that issue and factor it into the analysis of whether you should or shouldn't do it. You can't just go in blind and then all of a sudden be subject to a surprise. Whereas in bankruptcy, Brian, are there tax consequences?
There are no tax consequences to any debt that's forgiven in a bankruptcy in any way, shape, or form.
Right. So one of the differences, the whole point to take out of this, and then we'll wrap up on credit cards, is you need to analyze the situation to come up with the most effective way of getting rid of the debt the fastest. You have to look and take into account everything, including tax consequences, but there always is a plan. And what Jim needs to understand is he needs to get rid of the credit card debt to assure his future retirement. Now let's talk about foreclosure. Foreclosures still happen. That's the reality. And there was an interesting article in DS News, which is a great site on foreclosure and mortgage issues, saying, are we driving into another housing bubble? This was in December 9 article of last year. And it's basically saying that some markets are overfiring. San Francisco, New York, actually Miami's starting to heat up like another bubble as well. And there's speculation we may be moving back into that era. What the gurus are saying is lending policies are still, underwriting standards are still more strict than they used to be, and therefore we don't think that we're going to start running into these loans where you're giving 125% loan to value ratios. So they're saying chances are we will not see a bubble burst and a housing collapse like we saw back in 2008, but it is still an issue and it's still something to worry about. In terms of
do you ever wonder if when they talk about the housing bubble coming and we're never going to see one like we did in 2008. It's just people fooling themselves. I mean, history does have a tendency to repeat itself, and greed always has a tendency to exceed the parameters that are acceptable in business.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And the best example of this I can give you is, we've been following the housing market since 2008 daily on the show, when it was before the TV show, when it was just the radio show. And in the heart of the housing problem, every real estate expert said you will never see 1% growth in real estate values again. They were so sure of that in 2009 and 2010, and now we've been looking at 3 to 5% growth in values in the last 3-4 years, and markets are heating up again. What it just kind of goes to show you is the experts, even though they have knowledge, they do research, and they try and use analytical skills in making their predictions, it's still a mystery when it comes to our economy. But the big point to take out of this is there's still delinquencies. TransUnion had an article and a report that came out in December as well, and it says right now we're running at a 2.5% delinquency rate on mortgages, and there's around 52.6 million mortgages out there. That means there's 1,315,000 people that are quote-unquote seriously delinquent, which is defined as 60 days or more past due on their mortgage. So it's still a serious problem. By contrast, if you want to go back to October 2009, there were about 59.6 million mortgages out there. The seriously delinquent rate was 6.94%, so there were 4.1 million people seriously delinquent. So we have about 1/3 of that population, but 1,315,000 out of 300 million people in the United States is still a lot of people with a foreclosure, facing foreclosure with a problem, and we need to figure out what's the best advice for them to solve that problem so they don't lose their house. And after the break, that's what we're going to talk about.
It's devastating, the effects of debt and foreclosure on you and your family. There is a solution.
Worth Ave Gross, our firm will solve your problem. Some fear the word bankruptcy, but in reality, it's a strategy to save your home and to eliminate debt. If you're in financial trouble, timing is critical. You need to take action now. We've been saving homes and eliminating debt for over 33 years.
Call Fav Gross 888-235-HELP. Tax problems are major problems. Don't let the IRS levy your wages and seize your assets. There is a solution.
Worth Ave Gross, our firm will solve your problem.
If you're behind on your taxes and owe money to the IRS, call Fav Gross.
We've been solving tax problems for 32 years. We stop wage levies, resolve unfiled returns, and obtain the best possible settlements.
Call Fav Gross today, 888-235-HELP.
A lifetime of hard work. If you're approaching retirement and don't have the right plan in place, you can lose your home, your investments, and your savings. And you didn't come this far to lose everything. Putting a solid strategy in place with Samasco Law legally protects your assets as well as your wishes. Since a will doesn't cover you medically or financially, Samasco Law goes beyond ordinary asset management protection to safeguard everything you have.
How much can you afford to lose? Call Samasco Law today.
Is the debt piling up? Struggling to get by?
It's all about preserving future income. Bankruptcy is one option. When it's right, it's the least costly, most effective way to save your home, eliminate a second mortgage, and wipe out credit card debt. But you need to address the problem now.
We help people with bankruptcy. Call the experts.
Worth Ave Gross, our firm will solve your problem.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
A lifetime of hard work. If you don't have the right plan in place, you can lose your home, your savings, and more. And you didn't come this far to lose everything. Samasco Law wants you to know that laws are changing. Today, the average cost of nursing home care is $85,000 a year. With proper planning, we can help protect your life savings and get you the Medicaid and nursing home benefits you deserve.
How much can you afford to lose? Call Samasco Law today.
If you're retired and in a financial crisis, there is a way out.
It pains me when I see a retired couple exhaust their savings by paying credit card bills and for a home hopelessly underwater.
Fav Gross specializes in helping retired people in financial crisis.
You just can't keep paying until you're broke. You need to address the problem now.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
We're Thav Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
All right, let's do announcements before we figure out how to solve the foreclosure problem for 1.3 million people. We have a seminar coming up this Wednesday, January 27th. 2016, the best year I become debt-free. It's at our offices in Bingham Farms. Seminars are free. Attendees get a free copy of my book, Dump Your Debt. There's still some space available. To sign up for the seminar, go to thavgross.com or lawandreality.com. Click the button, and we will email you tickets, or we're kind of close to the seminar date, so we'll just get your registration confirmed on the phone or by an email confirmation. Seminar is free. You get a free copy of my book, Dump Your Debt. Question and answer time after the seminar, either in group or private. People really enjoy the seminars. It's a good time to take advantage of it. All the strategies of eliminating debt in the fastest possible way. You can also call to register, 888-235-HELP. Want to remind our watchers that we are also on the radio on Tuesdays from noon to 1 on WCHB 1200 AM 99.9 FM with Cliff Russell, Law and Reality Live, and on Saturday mornings from 9 to 10 a.m. on WDFN 1130 a.m. we have Law and Reality, The Reality, focus on that show. I want to thank our sponsors, Thav Gross and Samasco Law. Now I want to shift back to Brian. Jenny, we still have 1,315,000 people in the country that are seriously delinquent on their mortgage. A substantial portion of those people live in Michigan, and they need advice on how to deal with the problem, because it's not going away. Even if we go back to pre-recession default rates, if you're the person who's 60 days plus behind on your mortgage, it's as big of a problem to you now as it was in 2009, because it's your home, it's your life, and it's your future. So what to do? What would you say, Brian, is the most critical step? The first thing people have to do to resolve the problem?
Open their mail.
Why do you say that?
Because people who are facing financial trouble and they know they're behind on their house don't open their mail.
Why don't they open their mail?
Because they don't want to face the truth.
There is a tendency for people to think, if I don't know about it, it's not happening.
Right.
And I don't want to know about it, so I don't open the mail.
If you hide your head in the sand, I assure you of two things. One, you will get completely buried. And two, your house will still be foreclosed.
And three, you will have a mouthful of sand.
This is true.
You know, on that same topic, years ago I write a monthly column, and one of the first columns that I wrote was a message to spouses that if your husband is or if your spouse is coming home early from work, it doesn't have to be gender-based, and always comes home and always makes sure that he or she gets the mail and never discusses it with you, you should be on alert, because there's probably mail that your spouse doesn't want you to see. And a lot of times it's debt issues, lawsuits, and foreclosure. I had a case years ago where the house went all the way through foreclosure to the point where they were about to be put on the street in 3 days, and the client called me up and wanted me to solve the problem, and the client's spouse did not know of the problem. Miraculously, in this case, I was able to resolve it. But let me tell you, it wasn't just good lawyering. It was all the stars lined up positively, and it was a miracle that we pulled off.
And you used up all the rest of the magic dust.
Just about.
Yeah.
I mean, they still have a little magic dust left. Okay, so stop burying your head in the sand is the number one rule. Now, what options do we have to keep that house out of foreclosure? I can think of 3 right off the bat.
I can think of the same 3.
Reg X.
Chapter 13.
Loan modification.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you something.
And
even sometimes
even
chapter... I was going to say, even sometimes chapter 7.
And even sometimes foreclosure.
Yep.
As a way of solving it. All right, now, before we get to it, we have to evaluate the tools as to what is the right mix to solve the problem. We need to analyze the facts. And these are the facts we have to look at and evaluate. What's the fair market value of the home versus the mortgage debt? Is that house underwater? If it is underwater, is there a second mortgage so that the home is worth less than the amount of the first mortgage? I want to know, is your lender Chase, Bank of America, or Citi? What is your gross monthly income? What's the current amount of your mortgage payment? Principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. How far behind are you? Are you less than 120 days behind? Has the lender started foreclosure, and is there a sale date?
Wow, that's a lot of stuff you need to know.
It is, but if you called me up and you said, I have a foreclosure problem, can you help me? Those are the questions I'd ask you right off the bat on the phone. You don't even have to come in. I need to, once I know the answers to those questions, all three of us, once we know the answers to those questions, we are on the road to solving the problem. So, I'm going to give you the answers to the questions, and then we might tweak a little bit towards the analysis, but that's going to carry into next week. But here's our fictional mortgage person with a problem. Fair market value of the house, $150,000. The mortgage, first mortgage, $160,000 to Chase Bank. Second mortgage, $40,000 to Bank of America. Gross monthly income, $5,000. Mortgage payment, $1,875 to Chase. They are 60 days behind. Foreclosure has not started. Okay. First observation. Unless we can find a way to get rid of the second mortgage, we're $50,000 underwater on this house because the house is only worth $150 and we owe $200, and we have to make an evaluation as, is it a smart long-term play to keep this house or get rid of it? You deal with that issue all the time.
I do, and you know, in this case, because of the facts as they are, and these are very common set of facts, we're going to have the ability to rock and roll with a whole bunch of different tools of financial crisis management. We're going to be able to mix and match them.
We're going to be able to do bankruptcy.
And we're going to be able to do loan modification. And we're going to be able to get rid of the second mortgage.
We're going to do all of those things, but we're not going to be able to tell you how we're going to do it until next week's show. But in the meantime, here's the question. If we can get rid of that second mortgage, then the house is worth $150 and we only owe $160 on the first mortgage, then we've eliminated the underwater problem. If we can't get rid of that second mortgage, then you got to say, do I want to keep a house that I owe $200 on that's only $150? And sometimes the answer to that question is no, so it dictates a different course of action. The fact that he makes $5,000 a month tells three of us right off the bat he can qualify for a loan modification. Next week, we are going to take these facts and we're going to show you the miracles that we can do when you're facing foreclosure. Have a great